Hi, I'm Jamie,
And I'm Mark.
and today we are going to really dive into more about reputation management,
Mm-hmm.
more about online reviews, but really from the standpoint of multifamily apartment complexes. So, more traditional or conventional apartment complexes or mixed use type of communities.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that we were talking about just a minute ago was the fact that there are multiple generations that are choosing to live in apartment communities for a
Mm-hmm.
variety of reasons. And so, unlike senior living or unlike student housing, in a conventional apartment community, you're
Mm-hmm.
going to see millennials, Generation X, and baby boomers. And all of those generations have very specific ways that they communicate,
Yeah.
that they desire to communicate. So it's really interesting as we continue to dive into generational research that really impacts marketing to understand how it can impact online reviews and how we
Yeah.
engage with customers and the customer experience.
Right. And it's important to note, as we move from student housing into multifamily, the discussion definitely takes a lot of different turns because when we're looking at student housing, those complexes are built close to universities. They're a fair ways away from a couple places to eat, get coffee, things like that. They're built around an ecosystem that functions a lot differently than one
Mm-hmm.
for a multifamily with multiple generations of people living in it. As we progress into the years, we find that more people want to be in those urban
Mm.
lifestyles. They want to be closer to the city. They want to open their door and walk down the street to a
Mm-hmm.
coffee shop. Know the people around them, and that is more of a multifamily opportunity than it is a student housing one. Whereas student housing is so transient. All the people that are living there might be there from
Right.
1 year to 4 years, or less, or maybe a little bit more. So we're only dealing with them for that short time. So that's our time to influence their stay positively, and we know going into it that we have to give them a home for the time that they're going to be here.
Right.
As we walk into this multifamily discussion, it's the longer somebody stays with your
Mm.
complex, the longer they feel like it's home because we're helping to make it that way.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, I think one of the things we're seeing in research is understanding that millennials are choosing to rent longer.
Right.
They
Right.
want to be in leases. They're not as concerned about purchasing.
Right. Speaking from experience.
And then Generation X, which is my generation, they are moving. What we're seeing is they're tending to move back into those
Right.
multifamily communities due to life change. So maybe there's been a divorce, or maybe there's been just a change in location for their employment, and they want to be closer to work.
Mm-hmm.
They want to be closer to schools. They want to be really in that urban community,
Right.
have a higher walkability. So I think
Mm-hmm.
millennials and Generation X we're seeing definitely migrating and staying longer in leases.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then what's interesting about the baby boomer generation is most of that generation, they're entering into retirement. Their children are moving into college
Mm-hmm.
or starting their careers in urban areas, and they want to be closer to them.
Right. Right.
And so they're downsizing, or they're just electing to lease because they want to travel. So they would
Yeah.
rather be able to lock it and leave it.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. And I think something we're also talking about here is the idea of, we have this unit that gets taken care of not only by ourselves but by the staff on site too.
Mhm.
With a house, I think there's this huge resistance for millennials to jump into multifamily housing versus student housing because they feel like, I don't want to get a house because I have to take care of my yard and I have to, clean my pool and all these things that we get so used to doing in apartment living.
Mhm.
And multifamily housing over the last 10 years has become about those amenities.
Right.
Like we
They're
need,
more like hotels.
right, right. That's the sell. Like we want to
Mhm.
feel like every morning we walk downstairs, like Julio at the front desk is gonna say hi to us or something.
Right.
Like that's the big push for multifamily is making you feel like, I don't have to leave the house to have a good time. I can just go down to the lobby or go by the
Right.
pool and sit there because it's that resort style feel. So when we talk about reputation on this multifamily side, a lot of a lot of the complaints we see for reputation when those reviews get online, they're differing from student housing because student housing generally comes from this place of this is my first time living somewhere else and it's not the experience I was anticipating. Multifamily responses and reviews tend to come from this place of I know what a home feels like and this doesn't feel like home. So when we're talking about managing your reputation with multifamily, a big aspect you want to remember is exactly that. Like you are creating a home in any situation with an apartment complex, but multifamily you're putting the word family inside of what you're doing every day. So you're creating an atmosphere where people feel like they can build a life there, not just be there for 2-3 years before they have to go to somewhere else where their lease is going to go up exponentially every year. We want to make sure that when we're identifying those key points of those reviews, we know that this person wants this to feel like a home, not just a place where they can put roots for 2 years. And with the surrounding environment, that all plays into the complex that you live in. How close you are to a restaurant or coffee, but it's about what you create there that really makes or breaks your reputation online, because anybody can be close to a rural area. I mean, here we are in Austin, and there's sky rises and multifamily all over the downtown area. And they're very close to those places, but are their reputations the best? It remains to be seen, because we don't know if they're creating a housing environment for these people to feel comfortable, or if they're just putting them there because they're close enough to other things as well.
Got you. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the different generations and how they communicate. So one of the things that we often find is that there are subgroups within the generation. So there's singles, there are young families with children, there are individuals that have dual income, no kids, there are retirees, and those that are interested in downsizing. And all of those groups communicate differently.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as we've shared in other videos, 97% of consumers make buying decisions based on what they read online, which is key. And I think really transcends probably that millennial and Generation X audience group, whereas baby boomers are more apt to be word of mouth.
Right.
Or, be more involved in that word of mouth conversation.
Sure.
So I think it's important for everyone to understand sort of the differences and the expectations that these generations will have on you as a property and leasing team, and how you communicate with them. So, there's the online aspect that's definitely important that we've talked a lot about.
Right.
But just being consistent in your online reviews, whether positive, neutral, or negative. I don't know if there's anything you want to add about that.
Yeah, I think
experience.
it's important as the property to determine the way that your residents are communicating to you most accurately and most of the time. If your property does get a lot of reviews, positive, negative, neutral, this is clearly the way that area, that location is deciding, this is how I would like my feedback to be heard on Google, on Yelp, whatever it may be. If it's more of that, I'm going to come down to the office and I'm going to talk to you one-on-one about this faucet that's leaking. That's your staple of your residency. But what we're talking about here is with multifamily, it becomes kind of a blend there, that every sort of person has a different way that they want to communicate. And as much as we'd love to say, well, millennials go to Google and this generation goes straight to the office, it's not that cut and dry. So we make sure that whatever feedback we're pertaining from our residents is heard on all levels, rather than just singling in on, well, we're looking at our Google, but they just keep coming into the office. Well, then there needs to be a management of both sides of that angle, because you're dealing with those different generations that don't know, if I make a Google review, they'll know what I'm talking about. They might only think if I tell a manager that's at the front desk, that's the way that my problem's going to be fixed.
Right. So I think it's looking at it from a holistic approach, and that's a customer service experience. So the online aspect of that is important, because as we've said, consumers are going online to determine what and where they're buying from, restaurants, hotels, but also where they're choosing to live. So that's key and core and very important. And I think the other aspect of it is having communication that you can have offline.
Yeah.
So encouraging, to your point, encouraging individuals to bring that conversation offline into the office and follow up. I think that's something that we often maybe forget about from a leasing perspective side is, we have a complaint maybe online, we address it online, but maybe we let it go and forget about it.
Yeah, and to that point too, once we have fixed a problem, and maybe you've gone back to that review online, or the resident walked out of the door and they were happy, that follow up after that is also paramount. Because we don't want to wait for the next time they have another issue to just watch for their Google review to change again. And we don't want to wait for them to walk through the door saying, now that my washer's fixed, my dryer's broken. It always becomes this adverse effect of, if people think that they walked in and they got a problem fixed that first time, they're going to think it's going to happen again. So we can be that proactive step in a multifamily atmosphere and go to those people and say, we're really glad that we worked through that with you. It's been a couple days. How are things going? That follow-up alone, it's like holding the door open for somebody. It's the nicest thing, and it takes no effort. You don't have to pay for that. And it's just it's creating that customer service experience, like you said. We embody this atmosphere of we heard you the first time. We don't want to there to have to be a second time.
Right. And I think another key aspect is understanding what type of materials and or communication methods that the generations respond well to. And so again, online, bringing that, but also bringing that into the office. And then really taking a moment to showcase that through collection of testimonials. So taking an opportunity when you've made something right, or maybe you have a great 5-star review or multiple 5-star reviews that your residents have shared, reach out to them.
Right.
Provide just a simple gift that would allow you to capture that testimonial on video, because all of the generations indicate that they prefer brands that show authenticity. And I think one of the great ways that you can show authenticity and your personality behind your customer service and your leasing team is video.
Yeah, absolutely.
Showcasing a happy resident, talking about why they love the property, why they love the amenity set, why they chose their particular unit, what they're close to, the walkability. All of that is key, and it will help increase online reviews. And it will also just be a great marketing strategy that really doesn't take a whole lot of effort to produce.
Right. Our agency alone, this past couple months, we made a huge initiative to visit a multifamily property, and we did video testimonials with people who loved living where they live. And these people had been through situations where they had something wrong, had to talk to somebody and got it fixed. Some people who had lingering issues that they had issues with. We still got testimonials from all angles of this because that's important. Like you said, it's authenticity. These people want to hear, what's your worst and what's your best. It's a question we all ask anybody that we're interested in doing business with, because it's paramount to be that vocal about the reputation that you have and what you've done about it. So, and especially with multifamily too, such a great opportunity to show those different generations of they made my kid's day by giving him a lollipop when we walked out the door, or my grandpa couldn't go up the stairs, so they showed him where the elevator port was. Those simple things like that, that is what customer service is. It's taking the little moments and making them the platform for your business.
Right. I think another key is those operational insights that come from that dedicated reputation management program, where many times the operations team that may be sitting at a corporate office versus on site may feel blind to what is going on site, or why do we keep getting these neutral or negative reviews. And we can provide that summary of operational insights. So what are the different categories that residents are commenting on? Is it the tour experience for prospects? Is it a broken amenity, or a broken elevator, or cleanliness, or even the positive, that they're raving about certain staff members that are really going the extra mile. They might appreciate a certain level of service that you provide for package delivery, or an amenity like pet walking. So it's important to be able to showcase that for operations, and also to be able to feed that back to the leasing team to encourage them that, hey, this is what people are saying and you're doing a great job, and
Yeah.
these are maybe just a few areas that we need to really focus in on to change or shift the sentiment.
Right. And the key takeaway with any industry and any multifamily, student housing, senior living, wherever you are, don't get blindsided by the reviews that are online right now. Don't ignore them. Do something about them. We make this a huge part of our brand, our agency, our services, because it's free feedback. You didn't have to pay for those reviews to come to you. They were given to you. And for any industry to ignore that feedback is just, it shows to any potential resident, any guarantor, any parent, any child, any millennial, any Gen X, Gen Z, whatever it is.
They all care about it.
They all care about it. Yeah. So that's, as we close, I think the biggest takeaway is as far as multifamily housing goes, it runs quite the same way that any housing industry does, but you have a lot more opportunity to communicate in those different ways and notice those different ways that people communicate with you.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks for joining us today. We have so much more information that we would be happy to share with you, so reach out and discover more about how online reviews and reputation management can truly be a strong marketing strategy for your organization.
Thank you so much.